Um, you'll probably, I think the best thing you can do to practice, like get a hang of it, is like also saying like do draw like those like rock things, like just like I don't know, look at some rocks and just you don't have to make it perfect, right? Just try and your best to figure this. You can even do plants if you want to, right? It doesn't matter anything inorganic because as soon as you're stuck having to do things to the T, like it needs to look perfect, it needs to look, then you're not learning anything because you're going to be too focused on trying to make it look perfect rather than, trying to figure out what you're drawing, right? Like that's the one thing that happens a lot where like you're doing too many complex, it's like you're basically lifting up 50 pounds when you can't even do 20 yet, right? You want to take it easy first and drawing inorganic objects or plants first and just to figure things out to make it look convincing or beautiful is a very good starting point. I wish I learned this much earlier in drawing because my life drawing teacher taught me this and it helped me so much when I was drawing, like learning how to control my line art or coloring or painting, because when you have to start doing figures or things that are more figured out or like you know like machines or characters or things that are very dynamic, then it becomes much harder to learn because you have to consider anatomy, you need to consider like all these other things that are in the way when you can't even do the first thing, right? So how to practice line control and pressure, well, that comes down to your preferences because generally everyone kind of does everything a little different. Like I know one friend of mine who when they draw they press really hard and then their drawing endurance is significantly reduced because they're always pressing so hard. Even though they draw really good, they draw too hard because that's just how they develop. But then I've been telling her, I'm like, you need to like not press so hard anymore. That's why you can't draw like as long as other artists, is because you're spending too much time applying pressure rather than taking your time to just take it easy, right? Or set the brushes to a way where it alleviates that pressure, right? So yes, this is actually a very good video. I like this video a lot. It's very good.
All right. Good stuff. Good times.
Like there's so many things. Like me too, Hughes. Like there's so many things I wish I picked up like a long time ago. I took for granted. Yeah, there is actually a difference. So it depends on, because like say for chibis, you'll notice a lot of like chibis, their line art's very poppy, right? Like you'll notice if you look at a lot of chibi artwork, a lot of the line art's very thick, right? Out for the outside form because chibis are very shape dependent, right? If you look at any good chibi artists, you'll notice that they don't use much lines. A lot of their chibis are mostly shapes, like very good shapes, shape design, and the line work is selectively put on things that they want you to look at, right? Generally, the whole chibi itself is like a shape, right? Like honestly, I think who's good at doing actually good at doing this? Can't remember the artist. But if you know any chibi artist that you admire or like, or a style you really admire, analyze what they're doing. Like look very carefully. It's like what is making their chibis look good. The one things I want you to consider is shape design, where they're thickening their lines, where they are trying to make you look at, right? And then look at the shapes they're using, right? Look at multiple pieces and see what kind of shapes they're using to make their chibis look, appealing, right? But generally, you want to make sure because chibi art, it depends on the style. Again, it's the most important part, right? Sometimes they'll use brushes that are very thick, right? Sometimes they'll use some that are like very sketchy or things. Like it needs to be consistent, right? So if you're looking at a certain artist's style or approach, like analyze what they're doing that sets them apart from other artists, right? And then compare to, like, you know, what kind of recipe do they bring to the table versus this other person, right? Like being able to analyze that is very important, because then you can make decisions for yourself later that, like, well, if I could use this, then maybe I can combine it with this, so on and so forth, right? um so what's his name again? I think his name is oh my god, let me check. Shirabi, the one who draws all that. He's really good. Shirabi. He's very good at drawing between two different line art styles. So yeah, there's a lot of things you need to consider in terms of like what you're after, right, for your line work. But the most basic thing is to make sure it's a game use. It's like a mobile game made by Korean company. I like the game, but I had to stop because the grind, there's too much grind for me. And the other thing too about that game is I think they what was that, the time when they screwed everyone over with the hacks? I think that was the one thing that really screwed our NA server. I remember that one time. But yeah.
That's some stonks right there.
Do you remember what I was saying? I can't remember.
You're talking about the chibi artist.
Oh, Shirabi. He's not a chibi artist, but his approach changed. This artist, I found his YouTube just this guy. He's very good at drawing, but then when he draws his chibis, he does use a different like line work. Actually, his latest video would be a good example of how he does his chibi line work versus the stream he did 2 months ago. So it's a good time to analyze. His tempo is very slow.
Choose reincarnation. Reach.
As well. He doesn't draw fast. So what he does is his approach is he'll figure things out in the beginning very early. He doesn't really think about it too much, and then he starts drawing with a slow tempo when he's drawing. Yeah.
I mean, in the speed's something that just comes eventually. It's not
Yeah.
really need to worry about. in the
Yeah,
beginning.
don't think about it too much at the moment. Especially when you're still starting to, don't worry about it. It should be like the last thing that comes to mind, because speed comes naturally, because once you build up your line mileage and your muscle memory, those things just come naturally quicker to you, because it's like you've done them many times, right? That's why for me, even when I'm doing speed painting or anything like that, I can do it really quickly now, is because I've done that many times, especially with concept art, where we need to produce a lot of artwork in a short amount of time, right? We are taught, I was taught to like paint things very quickly with good silhouette and get good ideas out quickly. That's one of the skills I learned in being a concept artist. And that was most of my career. And if you're doing line work and more like, illustration, your one thing you need to focus is on the ability to what's up? Yes, I drink coffee, yes.
Important.
The ability to like take your time, slow down, focus on the things that are important for your image, because illustration is completely different than concept art. That's what you guys need to understand as well. Like, if you like a certain thing or whatever, like, you have to understand that there are actually two different types of art forms. They are not the same. One is to sell ideas, the other one's to draw pretty pictures. And being able to distinguish the two from each other is very important, because sometimes what illustrators will do is they'll make concept looking art, but then it becomes actually concept illustration art instead of actually concept art. Does that make sense? So, for example, let me pull an example out for you. If I can find it. I don't know if I can find it. So if I can't find it, I'm sorry. Give me like a few minutes. How do you line eye? Well, you just have to apply the same things I taught you. There's no difference. If you look at a lot of JP artists, how they do eyes, they are shape dependent. And the reason why they even darken the eyelashes is because, like, you got to think of it as like makeup. It's kind of like the same thing. Like, the reason why a lot of anime girls or whatever, like, their eyelashes are so thick is because it's technically makeup. That's what we're kind of compensating for, right? It's makeup like along the eyeliner, right? Or the eye line of where, all that stuff is, and exaggerated, right? And like, let's say if you are applying eyeliner on your eyes, you're literally just thickening, adding more dark tone to the eyes to like make them pop, right? You're literally doing the same thing. You just fill it in. So if you look at a lot of anime artists, they will just make a shape and then they'll fill it in, right? Eyes is very, I would say, subjective, because for anime, at least, it's very style dependent. So it's whatever you like doing, right? There's no right or wrong way to draw like an eye per se. Like, there is eyes better than other eyes overall, like some are more appealing than others, but that's again up to your own tastes, etc. However, being able to understand how to draw an eye is very important, though. So I don't know if I can find this picture. like even with this eye. So let's say there's an eyeball here, right? You need to understand, like, even though this is like anime, right, it still follows the rules of being an eye. So if I drew like a real eye, right, and then we add daijoubu. Timers are important. Gotcha, fam. But yeah, you see, even with an eye like this, right, understanding how this is working is very important, right? Now, let's start adding these shapes onto this eye. For example, her eye here, right? And we remove this information because this is technically do you see? Does that make sense? So even if you're drawing
A doorbell's kind of broken. It just goes off like that.
that's epic.
It's really not. It's very annoying.
No, like, it's epic. It's like
It's like
test your own, jump scare,
Dude, it's right outside of my my room.
Yeah, but that's the best part.
God damn it.
But yeah, does this make sense? The eye thing, like, do you see, like, even though I established those like things, right? Like, it's the same. So this is all what this black line is. It's literally just like your eyelashes or the liner or whatever, right? This line, the quote unquote, what is that called?
The eyelid bunches up.
Yeah, the eyelid bunch up, right? The line that all Asian girls that don't have it in Korea get artificially. So they have the double eyelid. That's what they call it. Yeah. Double eyelid surgery, right? They want this because it gives definition to the eyes, right? It gives this nice shape, right? This one thing. So
yeah, basically indicates where the eye socket is.
Yeah. So this is more like an anatomy thing, but like, again, the rules still apply, right? Like as I was telling you, right? Having a darker line to draw in more attention and all the other things involved, right? Depends on like what you want it to like bring you in, right? Naturally, eyes will always bring in the viewer, for example, because again, as humans, or at least from what I know from humans, is that they tend to look at faces first before anything else, and then everything else becomes secondary. Sometimes it's, other places, but generally it always goes back to the face at some point. So keep note of that.
Oh god. Oh no.
Oh no. Hopefully that makes sense, Morgan. Like, if anything, I want you to make sure you take note of what I've said to you. Like, you written some notes, review what I'm like. Don't review what I said, but just write down what you remember, like, and like type it out, whatever. But I would suggest writing it in your sketchbook or something, just because this information can be easily lost. And I feel like it's, especially when you're an artist, it's very important to take notes, because we draw stuff, right? We use our hands, and we got to build mileage, right? Line mileage. So take notes. It's very important. I do that a lot, actually. Whenever I draw anything or I'm doing studies, I'll take notes. I'll write down things like, what did I do wrong? What did I do right? What should I be focusing on? What did I learn? You know, it's very important, especially when you're trying to get better at your craft. It's very important to do these things. So take note of what I said. Try what I showed you, but keep it simple. Like, just have maybe a file that's just for study, like for pure practice and study, right? Directly for just line art. No color, it's just for line art. Spend maybe an hour and a half if you want, just doing that, just little doodles of whatever, just to get used to line work, right? On very easy things. And then when you feel comfortable, then maybe try drawing something you want that's more interesting to you, right? Because you got to think of art as a performance, right? When you're drawing like a very big picture or anything, that's you know, performing. You're taking all the things you practiced and studied and then applying it to like a real piece, right? You don't see someone who's playing their instrument to perform on stage without practicing first and memorizing their lyrics or, you know, their notes and everything, right? It's the same for us too. We got to practice our techniques. We need to practice our knowledge, and we need to make sure that we can do those things in practice before we can do it in true performance, right? When you're ready to perform, then you can give it a shot, see how it goes, and then, you know, you try the best you can. It doesn't need to be perfect, and then do another piece, and then you just keep going, because at the end of the day, it is mostly just giving it a shot after some self-practice and, you know, self-study or whatever, right?
The good thing about drawing is that there's no pressure when you're performing.
Yeah, there's no pressure, especially if Morgan, if this is not going to be your career or anything, just, you know, that's one thing you need to consider. Like, is this going to be for a career, or is this going to be for a hobby? And all that. Like, you need to give yourself a clear goal of what you're doing, because then when you have a clear goal of what you're doing, then you'll have a better you'll have an easier time growing as an artist, because you'll have less pressure depending on what it is. And depending on what it is, if it is for a career, then you'll have to practice a little more extra for sure. If it's a hobby, then don't worry about it. Just enjoy it, right? But if you're trying to learn things and, you know, get better at it, that you feel like you need to, then do it at your own pace. But don't worry about, you know, asking other people for a little bit of advice and all that stuff, because sometimes we just can't see our mistakes in our own work half the time, and we don't know the answers to everything, right? That's why I usually go up to my other artist friends and be like, I can't tell if this is good or bad. Like, I don't know if there's something wrong. I can't see. Can you see it? Right? I always ask my peers, because I think it's very important, right? Getting that feedback, because what I think may be right probably isn't right. Who knows? I don't know. I just go based on my like instinct, right? Half the time, like I'm not even sure half the time. Like, I'm just trying my best to make it as nice as possible. So, you know, don't worry too much. Like, it should be fun, right? Like, it should just be fun in general. Like, if you're not enjoying it and you're just brooding of like, oh, it's just not good, it's not good enough, then it's gonna be much harder to learn in general. I don't think so. It's a lot of information to be processed. I mean, if art was easy as we may claim it to be, right, at our level, then I don't know. I don't think this is too much, in my opinion. Drawing is hard. It is. Like, if I could give you like a clear answer, I wish I could, but this is the best way I can sum up concepts and make them understandable. Because the one thing that's hard is passing down that knowledge. And that's why I'm telling him to take notes, is because he needs to figure out what works for him. What works for me doesn't necessarily mean it'll work for him. What I can do is give him a guide to get where he needs to be, but then he can walk his own path and figure it out for himself. Does this make sense? Well, of course, that's what I was saying. Like, what I was saying is that if he has a clear goal of what he wants to do, he doesn't need to be an expert, right? He just needs to enjoy it. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, if he has a goal of what he's trying to draw, be it a hobby, be an expertise, then he'll have a much easier time learning depending on what he wants to do. Like, I don't disagree with you. I totally understand where your point is coming from, but it's not necessarily the only thing as well. But hopefully, Morgan, I know it may have been a lot, but you know, sometimes you just need that extra push to really, you know, get your toes in the water, because there's a lot of things to consider. But then again, as I said, just take it at your own pace, take notes that work for you, and then apply it that works best for you yourself, right? And then if you need a review on that information, don't worry about asking other people. They will try their best to help you. But again, you just have to figure out for yourself that works best for you, right? And again, have a goal and enjoy it. It shouldn't be stressful. Yeah, no problem. If anything, Morgan, you know what you should do after this, or whenever I'm just done speaking, do some drawing on your own time whenever. Maybe ping me with some line art practice, and then I'll do a quick correct for you, and then, you know, I'll give a critique, and then you just, you know, try again, or I'll see if you're on the right path or not. If I'm scared, because like, you know, especially with like, you know, I would say entry level or people who are not exactly like comfortable with their line work yet, like they don't know where they're going. It's like, well, the least I can do is like kind of like push you in the right direction. So if that will help you, then I'm totally fine with that. Just don't expect me to reply right away, because I am busy. I'll get to you as quick as I can and possible. What if I'm scared because I'm like, I mean, I guess you gotta make do with what time you have. I don't know. I'm sorry. Yabai desu. Go, man. I don't know. That's one advice I can't give. I'm not a doctor, sorry. I'm sure a doctor will tell you the same thing too.
I can't believe it took like almost an hour to figure out the roughs for cape movement. Now I have to make like something coherent out of it.
So much to consider. Yeah, no problem, guys. No problem. I've been doing this a lot lately, huh? Yes, don't stop.
Alright. Let's go.
Yeah, it's hard for me to like draw and speak at the same time because one, I do have push to talk, so that kind of screws up my controls. So that's why half the time I'm like not drawing. The other thing too is like I like to be concise with my thing. So like it just sucks because I wish I'd be like finishing a drawing in front of you guys and being like you know, like have something, but it's kind of hard. Like again, I don't believe in multitasking. I don't believe in it at all. Like you're either doing one thing or another. So for me, if I'm talking and doing some drawing, then that's me just mostly talking. And if I'm drawing and I'm not saying anything, it's because I'm quickly just, you know, doing drawing. Practice it. No, Tsuki, it's not. I don't believe in it. It's not a real skill. You can't practice multitasking. All right. So if it existed, multitasking, okay, someone should be cooking, drawing, and also giving a lecture at the same time, plus washing dishes. Tell me you can do that with multitasking. Someone will say yes to troll me, but I wish. So give me 6 more art. Can I have like, I don't know, have multiple limbs? Or have like a clone of yourself, like 2 other clones. One that's cooking, one that's drawing. And then the third one can be like, I don't know, doing adult stuff like going to the bank and getting groceries. Well, it can be that adult stuff too, if you guys like that, since you're all looters. So that's fine too. You can have like the 4th one can just do loot stuff all day, but I don't know, it's not, yeah, take away from it.
The 4th one just doing research all day.
Yeah. If you had, okay, here's a hypothetical. Let's say there was, you had like a clone of yourself, right? And this clone of yourself will like kind of do everything, like not everything it's told, but it'll do it'll do most things that like, you know, you don't want to do, right? It'll just do it. But the thing is, every time it does something that you don't want to do at the moment, or you can't do or whatever, it starts getting better and better at doing it to the point that it gets superiorly better than you. That's not even a word, but it gets completely better than you. How would you feel? But it's still you. It just becomes better than you. If my clone of myself did anything better than me, I'd be like, I'd be like, what is this? I'm scared. Kill myself. Yabai. Yabai. Yeah, I would have an existential crisis, really. Honestly. I think that's the first thing. Be like, it's performing everything I do that I don't want to do, but better. And it just gets better.
Oh no, it's gaining too much experience.
Yeah. Then it's like, okay, and it's like so proud and happy, and you're just there, like, yeah, that's good. It's good, right? Oh, I haven't seen our RA in such a long time.そうですよね。Are they not in the server? Maybe pings are disabled or something. Who knows? I forgot how her armor looks like. I'm just kind of making it up.
My music paused for no reason. I hate it when that happens.
Something like this. I don't remember. I'm just guessing. Going based off my own armor making memory. Ooh, wait. What's for me, Desu? For me? Yeah, what's up? What's the question, Desu? Oh, anatomical. I think the easiest, I'd say, in terms of like starting, definitely like torso and pelvis, because that's where all the rhythm of the body comes from, right? Being able to understand how how much range the rib cage and the pelvis have in terms of turning and moving, right? Of course, you can exaggerate because we're artists, right? We can, manipulate things to be a little more exaggerated, right? And not only because since the upper torso and pelvis or pelvic bone and all that stuff is very important, it's our main like thing, right? Everything else flows from the rest of the body. The body dictates the flow of everything else. So if you can do that first and understand that, then I think that would help significantly. And it's easy because there are two major forms, right? Like there are two big boxes. Like if we deduce them to their easiest components, right? You have like one big rectangle for the upper body, and then you have, a smaller rectangle for the lower, right? It's very easy, and it's like one line in terms of rib cage, right? Like it mostly bends. It's always either a C curve or you don't really get an S curve per se for a spine. Like movements is mostly C curves because the S comes from like the limbs, because the limbs are the ones kind of like following up, right? Think of like a piece of string, right? You put it on the floor and you wiggle it, right? It's like the same thing, right? Your body is like the tip of the string, and then everything else is flowing from the rest of it, right? It follows through. So making that as a priority, I think, is more important. And then once you get used to the body, get used to either arms, because arms are they're way more complicated than our legs, because our arms are one of our defining features as a human, right? We can supinate and we can pronate, right? Being able to, put our hand facing upwards and then facing downwards, right? And there's a term for this. So when your palm is up in the air, it's called supinate. You can say that there's soup in your hand. And then there's pronate, like a soup, like a bowl of soup. And then pronate is when your hand is facing downwards, all right? Which means you can say like pro basketball, right? So they like foreshortening. Well, the thing is, let's say you do learn the body, right? And then you start trying to draw the body in like foreshortening. You'll have a much easier time to understand the foreshortening for everything else, because our body works in like in that way where it's like in threes, right? In terms of like how our limbs are placed, right? However, learning arms are very important because not only do we have like very complicated like muscles in our arms, like how it all functions, being able to draw that is very important, because once you can understand how the arms are working, then legs become a little bit easier, because legs are more, our legs have like bigger muscle masses, right? And it's easier to like shape design that because the groups of muscles are more, I'd say, compact, while our arms are not as compact, right? And then like you could say you could learn legs before arms, but I feel like if you learn arms, it forces you to get into drawing hands. And then when you start drawing hands, that becomes like your ultimate test, because hands are hard. If you can learn how to draw really good hands, then you can probably draw anything else at some point, because hands are really hard.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, heads are usually, they're kind of like your candy, you can kind of like, because like heads are fun to draw, right? Like even if you're just drawing a face, you're not drawing the body, you're just drawing a head, it's fun, right? Treat that as kind of like you're in between if you're getting bored of something, right? Yes, I think it's very important to, let's say draw like a torso and then a head on top, depending on the angles. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like you're gonna have to experiment. I'd say the head's a little more easier because it is one cube worth of information, and being able to distinguish the planes on the face is, I would say, a little bit easier, but the one thing you need to watch out is don't draw anime heads if you're doing it. They are not good to draw, because they are a shortcut to drawing the features of the face. They are a simplification of the head and the face, right? So, draw heads that are a little more realistic. They don't have to be like, perfect, but as long as you're understanding what the planes are doing on the face and all that stuff, it does help a lot, because anime is just a simplification of realism. That's all it is.
You can't break the rules if you don't know them.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but if you're trying to learn a head, for example, right, and you're drawing it, you're mostly doing it to learn like how the person like stylizes the head, I guess, or what features they use to like, sell their characters. But the thing is, they still are based on, real thing, like a real thing, right? like the real structure of a skull. Like it's still the same. Like a good way to really look at those things is like those PVC models, like how those people make those models and see how they do that, right? Because it's a little close, because it's a little more, it's because it's grounded, right? It's a physical thing in the real world, right? But at the same time, what's nice about, you know, I would say anime and all that stuff is like we can literally cheat, because we can get away with things that look fine, but it's not actually anatomically correct. But then it still kind of makes sense because it still lies in the face of fundamentals, right? To make it look better, right? So, yeah, and feet is also, I would say, end game as well. Yeah, they're just as hard. Maybe not as hard as hands, but they're still hard, because what happens is all your points are allocated and everything else, and feet become ultimately the end, because when we draw like quote unquote feet, right? Half the time, like our characters are either clothed with like shoes and stuff, because, you know, we're drawing characters that are like, you know, like they have everything on, right? They're wearing clothes, they're not naked unless it's like lewd stuff, right? But generally it's the last thing, because it's just like, oh, just, you know, drawing shoes is easy or whatever, right? Which is not true. Shoes are actually really hard, but you know, without reference, they're fucking hard.
Environmental lighting has estimate colors. What color?
I mean, I think I explained, I don't know if you were here for this, but I did explain like photographs of things are not good reference for drawing with color. Like they are not good. They shouldn't be the thing you should be referencing or copying, because they are already enhanced images, right? These images are already manipulated to the point that they are not realistic, right? Like, yes, it's a picture of a real place, but it's not how we perceive it with our eyes, right? The colors are significantly different. The lens manipulates the perspective actually significantly, and you need to be careful of that, because different lenses can trick you in perspective, where they can make things far away seem really close, or make things far away seem bigger, or even more farther away than they actually appear. So there's a whole topic on this, and it's a lot to get into, but in terms of environmental lighting, again, if you are able to color a sphere with the most basic, you know, sensibilities of highlight, medium tone, core shadow, reflective light, cast shadow, right? And ambient occlusion and reflectivity, all these things, the most like basic thing, then color choices come after, because yeah, like this kind of stuff, right? Like this is a very exaggerated camera, right? This is really good for concept art, and this is really good to sell an idea. In real life, you wouldn't see this. Like your eyes cannot see this, right? This is a camera looking. This is not a person looking, right? Cameras are really good at deceiving you, because they're able to take more information and then put it in front of you, right? And it looks more like more grandiose because of like the elements that are placed, right? And in terms of like lighting and color, that is a sensibility you'll pick up with practice and looking at other like artworks that use color theory very correctly. So like skin and this kind of stuff, right? Again, if you understand how to shade a sphere and how cast shadows and all these things, it doesn't matter, because this is, again, you can take a part of her head and as a sphere, and that's already like, here, I'll take this image, and it's already, all the information's already here for me. We just do this. okay, we have all the information. It's all here. Do you see what I mean? Like, this is all the information. Like, if you can do that with a sphere, you can do this with anime, because yes, she is mostly in cast shadow right now. So her lighting situation is that she is not in spotlight. She's actually cast by only reflective light. So light that's bouncing over the object or everywhere around her, rather than a light actually hitting her, right? So we call this a fill light. So it's just light that's just randomly hitting her from all directions, right? Because she's essentially in shadow, right? The only reason we can see her is because there's some light peeking through, bouncing around, and then hitting her, right? And then bouncing back into our eyes to see her, right? If there's no light, you wouldn't see her at all. But since there is light, then all these things are bouncing off, and then we're able to take in the information. Now, if you look at the top one, right? The top one is, I'd say, backlit, and it's also a spotlight from the top. So what they did is, again, if we take the sphere, if we can still apply the same information, because let's say we put the light now, right? Even if it's the same lighting situation, like, it doesn't change, because now we just get this.
I find color a very hard topic to explain because I mostly go at it by like feel, like what feels correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I never really looked into like color studies and all that. This is mostly just experience.
Experience. Yeah, I'm the same way too. Like color theory, like I know some of them, but I'm not that good at color theory in general. Right? Like I still need the, you know, the guides of like, oh, the trichromatic or whatever. Right? Like I don't remember. You know, like I don't know. But it does come from experience for most of us, and I think that's a good way to approach it, because when you become too technical, you start losing the life of your drawing, right? Because you're too set on like rules, right? And art is weird that way, where like you need a balance of having rules, but then at the same time not, right? It's like being aware of it, but then not being aware of it at the same time. So I know that sounds really abstract and really fucking crazy, mind my language, but I'm just trying to exaggerate how bizarre that sounds, but it's true. Understanding is just as important as being able to apply it without reason. So
oh yeah, I'm in a server where there's like a guy who he spent a lot of time and effort into like going into the absolute technicalities of colors and like the CMYK and the RGB, all that stuff, light value, gamma levels, yada yada. He actually doesn't draw. I don't know why. He just spends his entire time analyzing colors and then he doesn't do anything with it.
Yeah, it's like a weird like just commentary on color. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna commentary on like color, and like that's it, right? Doesn't apply it, but that's like it's kind of like that one test or whatever, where it's like, you know, you can watch basketball and like learn it, but then you put them on the court, they can't actually play it, even though they know how to say all these things, right? Like it's different, you know. Yeah, so this is essentially what's happening. Yeah, Atsuki was pointing out. Like, I was gonna do that, but thank God he did it for me. I was explaining mostly color because that's what they were asking. But this is what's happening. So she is being lit by the surrounding area. The reason why she has that cutoff there, by the way, is yes, she is being cast shadowed on as well, right? There is something in front of her casting a shadow. Right. So she's not in spotlight, but then she's still getting fill light. And the fill light is, you know, the surrounding atmosphere around her. I mean, it would be sunset in this case, considering the colors, yes. I would say this would be sunset, yeah.
Yeah, usually when there's like when it's like orangey red, it tends to be sunset, and when there's a bit more yellow, sunrise.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That is correct. But yeah, like don't see these highlights on her hair and on her clothes and stuff. That's like the direct light hitting her, like the absolute light hitting her, right? Because that's essentially acting as like a rim light, right? If we look to the other side, she's mostly being hit by fill light, right? Which is just light to, you know, that's bouncing off from another direction, or it's a very weak light, but it's still giving us information, right? Just enough to be like, oh yeah, we can see her, right? She's essentially getting reflective light on her on the other side. That's not the highlight. That's why we can see her. Yep, and that's, I would say, a source light for the top one. So the apple is the source light, and the light is being generated from the apple, obviously, and then it's just being tossed around to be lit for her. And then the bottom one is a backlit. So there's no light in front. Well, I would say there's a fill light in front of her, but then it is essentially backlit, 100% backlit. Because if there was no light in front, she'd be in pure shadow, and you'd only see the outline of her.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be bounce light.
Yep, it could be a bounce light as well. Yep. The light hitting maybe whatever she's in front of. It's like a wall. The wall light hitting that wall, bouncing back onto her, right? Yeah, stuff like that. Oh, you think? Well, actually, I haven't been drawing, Aria. I'm sorry. I've been just talking. Remember, my the one thing I talk is that I can't draw and speak at the same time because I don't believe in multitasking. Yeah, you have a big repertoire of items. Oh, I mean, it's good to have reference, but just be careful with it.
Jesus, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's a lot more than me, actually.
That's more than me for sure.
Yeah.
man, this is gonna take a long while to animate this.
Enjoy.
Yeah, there's like a lot of there's like a lot of different things because the cape is torn. It doesn't like
Yeah, I see.
nice like nice fluid movements. It's like just waving around at the end, all that. Yeah, it looks really weird right now because this is moving and this is not, so I need to address that first.
Yeah.
So, first I need to put in a big tape.
It's people drinking.
Drinking beer. Why specifically
Beer. Okay, right?
It's just people that are drunk.
Yeah. How to draw drunk people. But yeah, I mean, you have plenty of things to look for, but again, the one thing you should like consider, Morai, is that you make the information you have sense to you, right? But give yourself like a clear, like set of things that work for you, right? Like set of like techniques or process that work for you, because everyone's process is different. Mine's is different. Tsukino's is different. Hugh's is different. We all have different way of approaching. So you need to find something that like works for you and keep it consistent, keep it simple, and don't worry too much about like, am I doing it right? Because half the time we don't even know.
That's correct.
Yeah. So you'll it's just the artist struggle, right? So 大丈夫. All right, I'm gonna draw thing. Generally, I don't even line out like. I'm just trying to show that that's kind of how I do it. I don't line out like this totally. My process has changed. Yeah, no problem, Tsukino. Enjoy your anime. Enjoy.
See that, Tsuki?
So yeah, thank you for contributing the light thing. 'Cause, I was about to do it, but then I basically forgot because I'm talking. You should be really content with where you are. You know, I think that's the most important thing. It's like you should be content with where you are, because the one thing you should always remember is that practice will not betray you, right? As long as you're, putting time into what your craft is or enjoying what you're doing, like you can only go up from there, right? Of course, if you stop and you don't, do things, yeah, you're gonna get rusty and you're gonna be bad at it and you're gonna forget things, because that's what our brain is good at doing. It's good at sorting out information and getting rid of things that deems not necessary for us, right? So yeah, I mean, the right practice is a hard definition because it's like what is necessarily right. Like I don't know. I can't tell you that. All I can say is just draw, and hopefully it works out for you.
Yeah.
No. Like even for me, like as I said, I've only learned line art within this year, like a year's worth. I haven't really. It was never really my strong point until like I put time into it because I had a goal, right? It's like I want to be better at line work. I'm gonna look at all the artists I admire who do it really well, and then really watch what they're doing, right? And then try it myself. Like if they do how they draw hair, or how they draw an ear, or how they draw a face, or how they draw an arm, or whatever, right? Or how they do a specific technique. Like I'll watch it, and then when I'm watching it, I'll try it myself. I'll pause the video, try it myself. I'll even maybe copy what they're doing, and then feel it out, right? And be like, oh, okay, I get it, I understand. And then I'll do a couple of drawings with that in mind. It doesn't need to be anything big or anything. Like I'll draw like, I'll do like hair strands or something like this. And then I'll like, or if I'm drawing like a finger.
That's one thing I wish I had when it comes to animating is watching how having an idea of how people go at it, because it's really hard to look at an animation and then go like, oh, this is how they approached how to animate.
Yeah.
Because you
it's
only
definitely harder for animation.
Yeah.
Because when things are in movement, it just becomes like a little trickier, all right? Because you have to go like frame by frame by frame, and it's kind of a little draining actually, being like, oh, that's how they did it, because it's like you have to like flip through it all the time, and then sometimes like you'll flip through everything, and then it's like that thing where if you say a word too many times, like it doesn't mean anything. It's the same with like going through 2, 3, 4 images over and over and be like, it just doesn't make sense anymore to me. Like it doesn't mean anything.
I've been there. It's annoying.
But I definitely understand that struggle for sure.
Yeah, like right now, I feel like the main thing that's holding me back from animating is just my workflow. Because, I don't know, like whenever I try to animate something new, I end up taking so long because I don't know how to approach it sometimes. Like this one. I'm just trying something out that I think is gonna work, but actually will work or not. Mostly because there are like not really many like examples of how to do it. It's basically just
it's kind of like you're blinding it until like it looks good. Yeah, that feeling is like the worst. It's like, I guess. Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like again, just go with what you can do. Like the current you will, attempt its best effort, right? And then when you can, like later down the line, when you haven't looked at it for a while and you're doing new things, right? You come back to it, you'll be able to probably figure out what you did wrong, right? I think what you're doing is totally fine for the current level you're at. There's nothing wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong, right? Like, of course, there are things that could be like, oh yeah, if you did this, it'll make it better or whatever. But I mean, I don't want to like infer into your information and muddy, like, the one thing you don't want is having too many hands in the pot, right? Like that's like the worst thing you can get it for critiquing, where there's just like way too many things, like just everything, right? It's like like that's like really rough for someone to like take in information, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. That's okay, Reunion. It happens. Like, I try my best to simplify things, but then also add in like the extra spicy, in it, right? So when I'm speaking, I try to make sure that it's easy to digest, but then I add that like spike that is kind of like very important, but then it won't be important until later, right? Like it's something that will come back to after, right? So digestible information, but then I leave the extra as something that can be like, oh my god, they just said that before. Why didn't I just realize that? Because that's exactly what happened to me with my life drawing teacher. It will never leave me, or will never forget. It's like, he told me, dear, he said, if you can understand how the cube works, you'll be able to draw way better than you are right now. Just understand the cube. You're drawing fine. You're fundamentally there. Just remember the cube. And then one day, I think maybe a year later or whatever, the cube thing like really hit me, and I was like, oh my god, he's right. Why could I not see this? I didn't understand that, right? Like it just finally came to me. And then after I picked that up, it literally answered a lot of my problems I was having with my drawings. And like, that's the kind of information I'm trying to give to you, is like, I'm giving you stuff that's very important, but then giving you things that are nice reminders later down the line. Yes, wisdom cubes. Because like the worst thing is like taking someone and Armstronging them to be like, all right, draw it like this, make it good, do it like this, do it like that. No one learns like that. Like maybe for like military stuff, and to get someone to fucking like man up or whatever the fuck, right? My language, I try not to swear too much, but that's different. Physical things and all that stuff, But in terms of like information, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to balance it. It really is. I don't even know how to do it like super properly, but I try my best not to. Am I a teacher? No, I'm not a teacher, Atsumi. And that's good. I'm glad you're trusting yourself, and I think that's really important. Because the more comfortable and more confident with your work, the better you'll improve over time. Like I'll let you guys like know a little story about me. So when I was drawing, like I had this ambition to work for like, it's like a AAA company and all these things, and like, for games and stuff. And I had like one friend who I really looked up, and I thought he was really awesome and he was really cool. So cool to the point that I even gave him like a game that I loved because I admired his work so much. But then in reality, he held me back in a weird way. So he was really good. I would say skill-wise, like the time when I was learning versus him, he was like superior to me. Like definitely really good. He was so good at painting, good composition, good lighting. And his goal was to work at Blizzard. So his work was really nice. It was really good. And I wanted to learn from him, or like, be his friend and all that stuff. But then, like, I remember, like, he hindered me in one aspect where he was like, stop drawing anime sucks, blah blah blah. But even though he watches anime and does stuff, he's like, it's not good for learning. But he was teaching me in the wrong way, right? Like kind of like, souring like what I enjoy and not making it, and it kind of like left me a bad impression. It's like, what's the point of drawing like what I like I want to, and like when I can't, when you're saying I shouldn't be doing that stuff, and like every time I like would draw something, I would feel miserable because it's like, oh, it's not this or it's not that, right? And I just never felt good about my work. Like my work was good, but then I don't know, I wasn't happy, and then I wasn't growing either. And then I remember one time, like, I don't know, he said something that really upset me. He's like, if you want to like work at Triple, you need to be like this. You need to do this and like this. And I'm like, he's like, in a way, he's not wrong, but at the same time, like, it was just the way he said it really rubbed me the wrong way, and it kind of made me not like him as much. Yeah, granted, he was really good. I'm not like doubting like what he said, because like at the time, right, like he was definitely better than me. He was definitely really skilled because his dad was also a painter. Like he can paint too, by the way. Like he is really good at just normally painting. Like his stuff like looks real, like it's ridiculous. He is really good, like his dad. And then he probably got that from his father, and then he can also kind of do the same thing, right? Like he can paint and do all these things, but like it definitely rubbed me the wrong way for sure. But then when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just stop like, you know, listening to him and talking, right? I'm just gonna do my own thing. And then I think from that on, I've never felt more happier. And then I surrounded myself with people who are more like-minded and open to what I was like into and stuff. And like I felt more comfortable and happier with my work, because like I felt like I was growing, and I felt like that I wasn't being like scolded for like doing things I enjoyed, right? Just because like, oh, he wanted me to get into something good, but then it's like, oh, but you shouldn't do the things you like kind of mentality was like so weird to me. And I'm glad I definitely like I would say we're still like friends, but we're not as like friends as we used to be anymore, because I kind of like, I would say I kind of cut ties with him. Like I wouldn't really respond to him or really say anything to him anymore. I wouldn't even comment on his work anymore, because it's just like there's just nothing, right? Like he didn't give me proper like critique. Like yes, in one aspect I do understand where he's coming from, but when I think back and the talks we've had and stuff, he definitely did not teach me the right way, or he didn't help me in the right way or encourage me in the right way at all. And that's the one thing I'm trying to avoid ever with anyone I'm like passing my knowledge with, is to like, oh, you need to be a certain way or whatever. Like that kind of stuff doesn't work, and I don't believe it works, because if that happened to me, this can happen to anyone else. So I totally avoid that. Granted, I would say too, I'm not going to tell you which artist, but granted, I will say he did come from a town that was a little ghetto, a little like where I live. There's like two areas, right? Like he lived in a very like gangsters area, so he's a hard ass half the time. And where I live, it was a little more like the richer side. So I kind of understand like how he is, and yeah. So his mentality, you know, being rough and tough was like something I couldn't really relate to. Like, yeah, he's really good. And what's actually funny now, when I looked at his art lately, he hasn't changed. Actually, his work looks the same, and like it's good. But then now that my sensibilities have changed and my things have noticed, I'm like, he hasn't grown. Like he's kind of like stagnated, right? Like he hasn't changed. Like there's nothing, like all the work feels the same, or like it's just like it's like he never changed. Like he's just good at doing what he's doing, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just funny because it's like, yeah, it just, what I thought I like, I don't like as much anymore. I'm surprised because there's stuff that I did admire, but then, yeah. No. Like he kind of does like a mix of both. Like he's definitely more like, I would say his stuff looks more Warcrafty and stuff. Like in general, like very big shapes, you know, that kind of stuff. Which mind you, I like that style too. Like I really admire that. It's very well done. But like in terms of like his level of like where he is, he hasn't really changed much. Like it's still good, but it hasn't really went further than that. Which is surprising because like someone of his level, I'd think he'd be like, you know, trying other things or getting stronger in a different aspect. Like he's learning 3D and stuff too. So I don't know. But then I look at his typology and I was like, LOL. I'm like, dude, typology is whack. That's okay. He's still learning. It's fine. So that's like, so I have like a love hate with him. So, but yeah, that's just a small little story. I'm glad, Ray. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, to be honest, like I am not that like strong as a person. Like I'm more of a person who's like, I'm not a hero or anything, right? Like I'm just the guy who is there to, you know, who wants to be there, but wants everyone else to be with them too, right? Like I look up to people in a way where like I want to be there, but I don't think I'll ever be there. And I think what's important is to always nurture anyone who's very passionate with what they like to do, because when you snuff out someone's passion, you snuff out their life. And that's like the worst thing you can do to anyone, regardless of whatever interests or things they have. So I always make sure to like nurture and encourage anyone and support them, because I think, especially with our art community, for example, or I think it's very important because like we are a little more emotional, because we are storytellers, we are communicators, we are artists, right? It's an art form and it's just the way it is. So I always make sure that you guys get what I believe is important information that you guys can at some point, maybe down the line, can pass on to others when I'm not here anymore. So I think that's very important to me. Let's see. Oh, someone. Oops. Oh, didn't even notice my friend. My coworker's messaging once because they were doing something on Monday, so I need to get back on this. One sec. Alright, I'm back. Okay.
Do you have methods to change your mind? To look forward to something while drawing? Do you just mean like motivation to draw? Or...
Here, I'll let Turtle answer that one for you.
dread when you're about to start. So basically, when you want to start drawing, but you don't know what to draw or how to start on it. All right. So what I personally like to do, well, specifically related to animation, is whenever I start on something, I'll try to add in just something that I haven't done before, just to see how well I would pull it off in that specific thing. And then at the end, I can see I have the result and I can reflect back on how it went. I think I really enjoy that, and that's just personally something, I guess. So for the animation I'm currently working on, there's two things in here that I wanted to try out. The first one is like interaction between objects, because I don't usually have that. Most of the time my animations are they are just one character just having an idle animation like this. Like the particles don't interact. Yes, there's wind, but there's not really like any physical contact. But for this one, obviously there's like the whole rigging behind here, and that will influence how the cake moves. So it's just things like that that are just, like, for me personally, is what like gives me that extra boost, I guess, is what you're talking about. Hang on. Let me just close my door because my housemates just got back. They're making noise. The one who's just living in the student door.
Right. I remember those days.
Scared of your own inconsistency. Oh.
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
One sec, I'll be right back.
Right. Well, I guess this is something very specific for me, but to keep all my things consistent, I actually have a reference sprite that I use for everything, just to have like a guideline on anatomy, style, size, all that. This is pretty specific though. Yeah, but being scared of inconsistency is just something that shouldn't really bother you too much, to be honest, because you won't be inconsistent. That's just a fact. Unless you have a very strong idea of how you draw things, it's probably not gonna be very consistent across all things, and that's fine. How do I put this into words? It's kind of, I guess, like consistency is almost the same as style. Eventually, you're gonna find something that clicks, and it's fine before that if you don't have something that clicks yet, because that's what all these drawings are for. Is just to, explore. Well, other than practice anatomy and all that, it's also just exploring different approaches, different takes on things, like what brushes you use, how you line art, how thick you line art, how much line weight you use, all that stuff. And like just eventually you'll find something that works. So really, inconsistency isn't something to worry about too much. As long as the fundamentals are there, everything else is just gonna come eventually. Because the fundamentals are they are not related to style or anything else. At this point in time, I have a pretty strong style, in a sense. But it did take me a while to, get into develop this. There were a lot of like different things, different approaches that I took. Let me find some older work. If my sprite doesn't freeze, that would be very great. Yeah. There is this one. That. Do I also have that one on here?